Good afternoon. Today it's time for a review of the trends we expect for 2018 using our FinGraphs.com platform. We'll first start with weekly charts of the major equity markets. These weekly charts give the perspective over the next few quarters. We've put a mosaic here with the most important markets, and on top we would have the S&P 500, the Nasdaq 100, the MSCI emerging markets, the Dow Jones Euro Stoxx 50, the FTSE 100 and the Nikkei 225. As you can see on these weekly charts, the US markets are getting quite overbought on our risk index, yet they're still uptrending. The S&P would have reached its targets, its impulsive up targets, and the Nasdaq 100 would be able to extend towards its impulsive to extended targets. That said, we believe that on both there's probably more potential into 2018, but we could probably count it in the 5 to 10% range. And we would probably expect them to top in the second quarter next year. The MSCI emerging markets has a bit more potential left, possibly also into the second quarter mid-year. It is also getting slightly overbought at the moment, and given our general scenario, we would expect a bit of a setback in the early months of 2018. Looking at the Euro Stoxx, the risk index is still quite low. It has room to move up. There's still quite a bit of potential to the upside towards 4,000, possibly 4,400. So that's above 10%, possibly even 20% upside of potential. We believe that if this is going to happen, the euro should weaken a bit in the first months of 2018. Looking at the FTSE, it's slightly more overbought than the Euro Stoxx, and it has slightly less potential, and probably the consequences of the pound being slightly stronger than the euro in the first months of 2018. Finally, the Nikkei, you can see the risk index is also still quite low, and there's still potential in a zone between 23,000, we're almost there, but that could extend into 26,500. So there's quite a bit more potential than what we have already seen, and the risk index is still quite low. Now we'll quickly review two markets in particular. First of all, the S&P 500 on this investor's view, which combines a weekly chart for the perspective over the next few quarters, a daily chart for the perspective over the next few months, and an hourly chart for the perspective over the next few weeks. All three trends are still heading up, so we are in a potential continuous uptrend situation. The weekly chart, as we said previously, has pretty much reached its potential, but it is theoretically still heading up. The risk index is overbought at the moment. On the daily chart, we could still move up to extend into our impulsive 2 targets, which could reach into the 2760 and to make it simple, into the 2800s over the next few months. That said, at the moment, we are a bit overbought with our risk index in the red zone here. On the hourly chart, we have pretty much also reached our potential here, and we also pretty much overbought on the risk index. So our view when we look at all three charts is that we'll probably see some consolidation over the next few weeks, probably towards early mid-January, before a last move up materializes into the spring. Looking at the Euro Stoxx, we can see, as we said previously, that the potential on the weekly is quite compelling and that the risk index is still quite low. We can see that the daily chart hasn't advanced much because of the strength of the euro over the last 6 months. It is actually at the moment in a consolidation that could still see a few weeks more of sideways movement before it starts to accelerate up, possibly from early mid-January. The hourly chart is working through our corrective targets here. If it does make it above 36.17, it could have a bit of a run, which would be more positive than what we see here on the daily. But at the moment, the risk index is also overbought here. So we believe that we'll probably see a more lateral consolidation continue for the next few weeks before it can accelerate up again. Now we look at currencies, and we have the currencies quoted against the dollar here. So we have the euro, the pound, and the Australian dollar. And although we've had a very, very strong moves this year on these currencies, they're still in what we would consider a correction up. They pretty much came into this corrective target, which will act and have already acted as strong resistance. We believe that these currencies against the dollar will probably push a bit into the spring, or at least hold ground versus the dollar into the spring, but will not burst above these corrective targets. The corrective targets are around 124, the higher end on the euro, pretty high up on sterling, around 147, and we don't believe we'll make it that high, and around slightly above 0.80 on the Australian dollar. Our view is that we will retest here during the first months of 2018 and then gradually roll over as the year comes to an end. If we look at the dollar index, it's the similar picture in reverse. It has corrected down into its corrective targets, which now act as support. We could see a bit more work here into the spring, but then we believe the dollar could accelerate up from late in the second quarter to year end next year. Dollar yen is more positive. It's the only one that is actually positive for the dollar here at the moment. It has moved up into its corrective targets. It has worked its way through this range all through 2017, but see, the risk index is still very, very much low. And we believe that it has the potential to accelerate up, at least towards its corrective targets up towards 119, 120. The Swiss franc has also been weaker than the currencies we could see above here. It has started, the dollar against Swiss franc has started to move up again. It did reach its corrective targets, which act as support. We believe it could move up in early 2018, possibly retrace a bit into the second quarter and then accelerate up again. We'll quickly look at the euro dollar. We could see that it has reached our corrective targets up on the weekly chart, which we see here, and that it is working through this resistance. On the daily chart, it has reached its impulsive targets, and the risk index is very much overbought. So we believe that we will see more work here as the 2018 begins. If we look at the hourly chart, the risk index is quite low. It's still moving up, so the actual counter trend move will probably not start until early mid-January. So we could see a last move up here on the euro over the next few weeks, and then a consolidation that extends into possibly late February, March. Then if you look at dollar yen, it is in its corrective up range. It is working through it. The risk index is quite low. We believe it has potential to at least make it up to the range in towards 119, 120. The daily chart is quite positive. It shows also potential in towards 116, 120. It was slightly overbought here, has consolidated, probably has another few weeks to consolidate before it finally starts to accelerate up in early mid-January. If we look at the hourly chart, it is currently correcting. We have support around 1160. We will probably go and test these over the next few weeks, but thereafter, we believe that the trend is still positive. Quickly looking at rates, and these are weekly charts, first of all of the German 10-year rates and the German 2-year rates. And what we could see is that rates in Europe have been moving up throughout the second half of 2016 and 2017. They're still in that corrective uptrend and could extend into early 2018, probably until possibly the end of the first quarter. Now, if we look at the 2-year, they're still in a downtrend. It's an extended downtrend, but we don't expect much of a move here on the 2-year. So in general, we believe that the curve will be slightly steepening in Europe. In the US, we're still positive on the 10-year, but it still needs to break out and accelerate. As with other risk assets, we probably expect a setback into early mid-January before it accelerates up into late February, March. But the potential is quite compelling over the next 3 to 4 months. In the US, we're still positive. We're in the US 2 years, so short term, we're still positive, slightly overbought. So we would also expect some kind of a correction over the next few weeks. But then the trend is still heading higher. That said, there's less potential here on the 2-year than on the 10-year. So in this move we expect early next year, we believe the 10-year has more potential than the 2-year, which could mean a bit of a steepening, which should be temporary, but could last 2 or 3 months. Finally, we look at commodities, and first gold. Gold is still heading up on our weekly charts, possibly towards the end of next year into the 1500 range. However, at the moment it is consolidating, and this consolidating could last a while longer. If you look at our daily charts, we have the potential to probably move down towards February, March, and in back slightly below 1200 and possibly down to the 1150. In the meantime, you could see that we have a small notch here and that we're correcting up, and that this correction up can be seen here on the hourly. It is going to meet resistance around 1271. If we were to make it above it, we'll probably revisit the higher 1200s. But in general, from early mid-January, we expect this downtrend to be reinstated, possibly into end February, March. Finally, oil is continuing to push higher. It is in a corrective target up. You could see that the risk index is quite linear to the upside, and our targets would see some resistance towards the 69.70 level. So there's a bit more to go here, and we believe that oil should achieve it over the next few months. If you could look at the daily here, it's getting overbought, but it's not quite there yet. We sort of had a consolidation. We believe it could push higher in the first months of 2018, and we would also have targets here towards the 69.70 level. If we look at the hourly, it seems to be reaccelerating up. We still have a potential here. The risk index is in the middle of the range. We'll probably move up, correct down again early January, and then accelerate one last time. And that's it for our projections for early 2018. We wish you all the best for the holidays and for 2018. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.